Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today we have a special guest here, and we are going to interview Dr. Jodie Avery. Dr. Jodie is a STEM ambassador, a social researcher, and a consultant with advanced skills in both quantitative and qualitative research methodologies. Jodie is a senior research fellow in the Endometriosis Research Group at the Robinson Research Institute, the University of Adelaide. Um, Dr. Avery, here for us, Jodie, has a keen interest in women's health and has developed studies to improve diagnosis of endometriosis using imaging tests and taking advantage of artificial intelligence. With us, we also have here Mehreen, that is also part of TWEM, and I am Amanda, head of advocacy and research with TWEM. Well, thank you so much, Jodie, for being part of this initiative. TWEM has an interest in advancing endometriosis awareness, and one of our goals is also to advance the knowledge on endometriosis research. And it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you so much. Jodie, maybe we can start talking a little bit more about your experience as a researcher and what brought you to study endometriosis specific.
Well, I'm part of a greater team, and this team is led by Professor Louise Hull, who is a fertility specialist and a gynecologist in Adelaide. And she found a lot of her patients who were coming for fertility treatment also had endometriosis, but they hadn't been properly investigated. And she would send her patients off for imaging, and the imaging that she would receive back was not of great quality. So she when she requested specific transvaginal endometriosis ultrasounds, she would not be getting these ultrasounds because it turns out that not many sonographers actually know how to do these scans properly. So the diagnostic practices would say, yes, we're giving you a scan, but they weren't actually doing that. So we thought, how are we going to make this better? How are we going to make sure that women do get a diagnosis without having to go through surgery as their initial way to get a diagnosis? So she thought, well, maybe if I combine ultrasounds, specialist endometriosis ultrasounds, and MRIs together, we can see that there's going to be better diagnostic accuracy in these tests. And she also had evidence to back this up because she had undertaken 5 Cochrane systematic reviews in all different biomarkers of endometriosis, including imaging, blood, urinary, endometrium, and the combination of a couple of those ones. So, and she found that the best way to diagnose endo non-invasively was to use these imaging tests. So we brought a team together using gynecologists, specialist sonographers, um, radiologists, and AI scientists from the Australian Institute of Machine Learning here in Adelaide as well. And we worked out a way of collecting lots and lots of imaging from people who'd already had imaging, and some of them had already had surgery as well. And we've been developing an algorithm, and we've got some really excellent results using that algorithm and managed to get a patent as well. So we just continue on with that work, and we also will be validating that algorithm on a prospective study of almost 400 women as well.
Wow, fantastic. And is these participants are going to be all from Australia, or for now the validation is going to be also worldwide?
Well, that's one thing we're doing is we started off with Australian data, And we also have a very good friend who's part of our study called Dr. Matthew Leonardi, who's Canadian, and he's supplying us with a whole lot of ultrasounds from his practice. We're also looking at expanding into the US and the UK, because in order to commercialize our product, which will be a product that we can give to diagnostic radiography practices to embed in their PACS system to help the radiologists with these diagnoses. We need to get data from all over the world so that we can eliminate any of the biases that come about when using AI. So that's a big task for this year. So we've just got a bit of money to help us do that. So we've got to break into America, which is going to be a little bit difficult, I think. But we've got lots of collaborators in. There's Dr. Daniel Nassar, who's from University of California, San Diego, and we've got some other friends over there as well, and a lot of UK collaborators as well. So
Fantastic. Well,
yeah.
this initiative is it's an urgent need, I could say, because as someone that experiences endometriosis, it took me many years to be diagnosed, and I lost track of how many ultrasounds I have done throughout my life, and nothing would show up because of many factors, as you said. The practitioners are not trained enough to visualize what they need to see to identify endometriosis lesions and maybe other factors as well. So, and I can testify that many other people suffering from endometriosis went through or are going through the same journey. So it's fantastic what you and your collaborators are developing in this matter. And and so currently, as I understood, currently your studies in your lab have been focusing on using data from these ultrasounds that have been shared with you and your team. But are you developing any other studies with clinical patients at the moment, or this is not the focus of your lab or your research group?
So we are not only getting ultrasounds, but we're also getting MRIs from the patients as well. And the problem is different places do ultrasounds and other places do MRIs. So, and not many people do both together. So that's sort of the main focus. We've just sort of finished our first tranche of funding around that. But I've actually received another couple of $1 million to look at adolescents. So what I will be doing is recruiting hopefully about 400 adolescent girls, and I'll be. They need to be within 6 months of like the beginning of their diagnostic journey, and they can't have had surgery yet, because we want to see um, what their trajectory is. Whether they go and get imaging and what happens to them after that, or whether they do go down the surgical route and what happens after that, and whether, an imaging diagnosis can help make sure that they go to school and participate in sports, and how it affects their quality of life. And I've actually got a young girl, Rachel Hosking, who's doing a PhD in this area, and she's really concentrating on the quality of life of girls with endo. And at the same time, we're trying to develop a new quality of life tool called the HeroQual E. We've actually started developing this in PCOS, actually, but we're bringing it into endo as well. So that's another little project we've got on the side. And then we've got another project which is looking at general practice or family physicians' barriers to diagnosing endometriosis, because we really think that this should be something that is diagnosed by general practitioners in Australia, even before the girls have to go and see a gynecologist, because um, it's really quite hard to get an appointment with a gynecologist in Australia currently. and there aren't enough gynecologists to go around to do surgery on all the 1 in 7 women that have endometriosis. We're trying to bring it back to basic level, to get women the support they need initially before they have to go through specialist appointments. And what else are we doing? We've got a website called Endozone, which is
The
one,
zone, okay.
yeah, it's a one-stop shop for women with endometriosis, just to find out about management and different therapies and different research they can be involved in, and yeah, lots of really great information, and it's all evidence-based, which is so important in this area. Just thinking, we've got lots of projects going on at the moment. So, we're
Well,
looking. We've got a master's students looking at accessibility of a diagnosis in Australia, because just like Canada, Australia is a pretty big country and very um, remote some areas. So we want to make sure, like, especially with our First Nations people as well, make access to diagnosis better for them, because some live so far away and they don't have access to, a big MRI machine. Um,
yes.
we'd love to be able to, like, uh, be able to get them a proper endometriosis scan, and then get someone, say remotely, or digitally, to be able to read those scans for them as well. So,
Wow.
mm,
Lots and lots of initiatives, lots and lots of research being conducted in your lab. That's fantastic.
yeah.
I'm glad to hear. And well, we also would like to use this interview and our websites, our platforms to help increase recruitment for researchers. And we would be happy, more than happy, to share whenever you have recruitment active. We would like to share this in our website and our social media so that it can help researchers to get participants to their studies. Without participants, unfortunately, our knowledge about this condition will not evolve, right? So it's fundamental that we can participate. And a fun fact is actually something that caught us by surprise. Eventually, in one of our meetings, we were analyzing our metrics on our social medias, and a big part of our audience comes from Australia. And yes, and everything happened naturally, organically. We didn't target Australian people suffering from endometriosis. It's just our content became more and more visible, and it became visible to people in Australia. And when we saw this, we were really happy. And we were also debating what could have caused this, why people from Australia, so far from Canada, are so interested in what we are doing here. And one of the things that we thought, it's that it seems that Australia has advancing a lot in terms of research funding for endometriosis. We also see nonprofits being created and advocating for people suffering from this condition, as well as some public politics that have been changed recently. So, what is your perspective being part of this field in Australia? What is your perspective on this matter? Do you see Australia advancing as much as we can see from outside, or I'm sorry, is this just an outsider perspective?
Um, so probably about 5 years ago, the Australian government, like the national government, had a thing called the Parliamentary Friends of Endometriosis, and they started the National Action Plan on Endometriosis. So there was a bit, I think our Prime Minister at the time, his wife had endometriosis, and it was a bit of a running joke, because, well, he wasn't a very popular Prime Minister, but he used to ask his wife everything. So if there was ever a big crisis or anything, he'd go, "What would Jenny think?" And it turned out that Jenny had endometriosis. So we think that might have been the start of something. There were a few female politicians also who suffered from endometriosis who were very vocal. And then a, a lot of money suddenly, because of these, a lot of people were also lobbying for money as well. And there are about, there's lots of different patient advocacy groups in Australia. And suddenly some money became available, and we were fortunate enough to get a little bit of that money, and there was other people got lots of money as well. But then they sort of formalized all the advocacy group networks. So now there's this big group. There's Endometriosis Australia, but then there's also the Australian Coalition of Endometriosis, um, and a big group called Endo, which is Queensland Endometriosis, but um, they're a bit more national now. So there's been lots and lots and lots of work done in that space. And in South Australia, where I live, one of the politicians herself had endo. And after talking to us one day, she decided to start a thing called a select committee on endometriosis as well. So a lot of different people presented on what had happened to them and their stories and what we could do to change things as well. So that sort of happened last year. I'm not sure what's coming out of that at the moment, but we're just trying to do things like one of the really great things was that the government funded 22 endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics across the country. And in my state, there was only one, and that was actually in the country. So we lobbied and said we really need one in the city as well. So we've got two in South Australia, and we've got a pretty small population. But other other states have got a few more. I don't think we'll get any more in South Australia, but they're going to have another 10 more funded as well. So that's a really, really great initiative because it just brings
Yes.
a one-stop shop for girls with endo. Um, so a lot of the politicians are becoming very aware, and the lobby groups are huge. So there's and there was lots of stuff in the media as well. So I just think it's people are finally listening to young women in this space, and that's why attention's getting in this area more than it used to be. It's a great time to work in the area as well because of all these
Yeah.
support and everything that's happening. But
And we can see this movement in Australia resonating across the world because we can see that other countries have started slowly, but started to talk more about this. In Canada, we are also seeing a little bit of increase in funding for women's health. It's still very low compared to what we need, but we are seeing changes. And I think, as you said, this is a great moment to be in this field because now more and more we need to discuss about it, right? And we have seen also movement in the biotech companies regarding developing tools, kits, tests to diagnose endometriosis. So, in your lab, you have been developing imaging tests, techniques, improving using AI to help in this matter. But we also see other biotech companies using saliva, endometrial tissue, blood, even menstrual blood to try to detect a biomarker that can be used to diagnose endometriosis. How do you see this development? How, in your perspective, being part of this field, what do you think that is going to be the future? And more importantly, what do you think is going to be the role of AI helping diagnose endometriosis?
so a lot of these tests, like specifically the blood tests and the salivary tests, all they really test is inflammation, and they don't and they can, if someone's got inflammation in the body, it could be arthritis, it could be anything really. So basically women have symptoms of endo and then they have this test and it's going, yes, you've got inflammation. But it's not actually telling them what type of endo they've got, where the endo is. It's a tool to say, yes, you have endo, but you really need to come in and do imaging afterwards to say, yes, this is where it is. If someone just does this test and they say, yep, you've got endo, you need surgery, the surgeons aren't necessarily going to be prepared to know where the endo is. If the endo's on the bowel, you need to bring a colorectal surgeon in to assist with that operation. But if you don't know where the endometriosis is without using imaging, then you've wasted time because the doctor will open the woman up and go, oh, this is too hard. You'll have to come back later when we're better prepared, and shut them. So that means there's going to be repeat surgeries. And we don't want that to happen to. So yes, these tests are good maybe as a screening tool. And a lot of money, especially in France, has been put into these tests, which haven't really come up with really great results as yet. It remains to be seen what's going to happen. So, yeah. So with our tests, we've been getting quite high sensitivity and specificity. We will be able to tell where the endometriosis is specifically with pouch of Douglas obliteration, bowel nodules, and we're working on endometrioma and uterosacral ligaments at the moment, and we will be including more signs in the future. And we will also possibly be including other modalities like nuclear medicine to help look for things like superficial endometriosis, which has been quite hard to find in the past. So we're constantly developing our program. So yeah, we'll just to see how we go. I think with the AI, we are always working with our AI team. We work with a guy called Professor Gustavo Canedo, who was in Adelaide, but he moved to the UK. So he's like one of the world experts in computer vision. And we also have Dr. Yuan Zhang, who did her PhD with us, and she's in Adelaide, and she's very primarily responsible for developing the algorithms. So we keep constantly updating these things. We'll be using things like federated learning as well, so that we can get over privacy issues, transferring data from one country to another. The main problems we have are that we do need lots and lots of data. And because endometriosis isn't a screen, like, things like lung cancer and bowel cancer and breast cancer, people are screened for these. So there's lots and lots of available data. In endometriosis, people aren't screened. It's only
Yes,
when you've got
exactly.
a problem that you will go and have a scan. So that's our main problem, not being able to get enough data. But, we're trying very hard. So I think
Sure.
AI is going to, I mean, every day something new with AI happens. So we've got to keep up with that kind of thing. We've got to make sure we've got the right people who can do that kind of thing for us as well. Yeah.
Marie, would you like to ask any questions so far? Do you have anything in mind?
Sure, yeah. I had one question. Just because I'm a person of color and like I was just thinking about the people in, developing countries. So you mentioned most of your data you want to expand to the US and the UK. Is there any future plans to expand to other countries around the world where there's high rates of endometriosis?
Yes. We have been talking to our collaborators in Indonesia, and we will try and it's very, like, each time we go into a new country, we have to get through ethics and get the right collaborators and things like that. So it does take a lot of time. There's a huge endometriosis movement in India as well. So hopefully we'll be able to tap into that. China. Yeah, so we will continue to try and get into other populations as well. And I think luckily, in Australia, Canada, America, we're all pretty multicultural. So um, we're able to get lots of different people in our data sets. But, the makeups are slightly different across. And apparently, data from other countries isn't quite as good as data from America. So if we ever want to go down that route to get FDA approval, that's going to be interesting. Yeah. So we're trying.
Hope you are successful in this endeavor. Well, I think I would like to ask you if you have any final message for our audience that is going to be watching this video and reading our interview.
I think in the future there's so much hope for women with endo. Just And I think there are new treatments that are coming on board as well. Like there's a great new drug called relied, which has come out in Australia, which is showing some huge promise. And drugs haven't been developed for a very long time, and suddenly there are lots of new drugs out there. So hopefully that will be a great thing. But we actually need to make sure we get proper diagnosis first before we jump into that, and just make sure that we can support women through, going to school and making life much better for them. But yeah.
It's a great advance, your research with adolescents, with teenagers, because that's when most of the cases start to develop. But many of the symptoms are dismissed or are not considered because it's such it's a stage in our lives that we have so many changes in our organism, right? And many times we are not taking seriously. But that's when we need to have a closer look, because if we can catch it soon, the consequences, the life consequences, the health consequences are going to be minor, and also the cost for the public health, it's going to be way less, right? You don't have to handle so many consequences in the future. Well, thank you so much, Jodie, for your time. You really appreciate your participation here. And I'm sure that our audience is going to love to hear about your studies and your story as a endometriosis researcher. And feel free to reach out to us whenever you would like to share the recruitment for your studies.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mehreen. Bye bye, guys.